Welcome to Beacon Bits. I'm your co-host, Serge Boudreau, and every episode I will be joined by my co-host, Yves Boudreau. We delve into the world of work from the employer and employee viewpoint. Kick back, relax, and let's talk work. Beacon Bits starts right now.
Welcome to Beacon Bits. I'm here with the man in black, Serge Boudreau. Serge, you've been traveling a little bit all over the world?
Not all over the world. I went to your favorite place, Las Vegas, for the HR Tech show, which was a whirlwind again, but really impressed. I don't know if you've ever been to HR Tech. I don't think you've been, right?
No, I have not been.
I think you should go next year. It is by far the biggest show in this HR Tech space. There's not as many practitioners or TA leaders or HR leaders. It's really a show for partnerships in the industry, but it was a good one. Like I always impressed, saw some Canadian companies, saw our friends at VidCruiter. They're based in Moncton. There's an exciting new Calgary company called Zayzoon that does earn wage access or daily pay. They had a massive booth, but it's all the same players. Paradox, Eightfold, massive boots. Like, I don't even want to know how much they spend for those, but it's crazy. You know what was surprising though? There was a lot less discussion about AI than there was last year. Last year, obviously, was the first year after generative AI started to make some inroads. But a lot of them talked about AI adoption with their tools. And I want to get your take on it because, in my opinion, and I am a neophyte when it comes to this, is good AI doesn't need adoption. You just use it, right? Like you shouldn't have to do much for people to adopt AI.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree because whatever processes you had before, you have to rethink them, like how you're doing your day-to-day work. It's also trying something that you might not be comfortable with. So I think AI adoption, it's like anything else. It's going to be much quicker than a lot of other technology, but I'm not surprised also that it wasn't as big of a topic this year because I spoke in Newfoundland 2 weeks ago, and you can definitely tell there's AI fatigue. Like people are just tired of hearing the words AI, which I don't blame them. So I'm not surprised that this year is different.
Well, I think in the HR tech space, we're a little spooked, right? There is regulations in many states in the US. We're going to start seeing that in Canada as well. And actually, talking a lot about AI could really slow down your sales process if you're an HR tech vendor, in my opinion, because companies are going to look at it pretty in-depthly to make sure that the AI is legit and it's not causing issues that it shouldn't, because at the end of the day, they're the ones responsible if it does. So I think it's like a concerted effort from a lot of HR tech firms. They're like, maybe we downplay AI a little bit. That's the impression that I got.
Yeah, time will tell. I'm tired of speaking of AI myself too, but I definitely don't think anyone should be ignoring it. That's all.
No, I think the trends at HR Tech, there was a lot on skill-based hiring, still a very big topic of conversation. One space that I find really crowded, there were so many companies and I'm not sure there's tons of values, is like these employee engagement platforms. I don't really know what they do, to be honest with you. There's so many different platforms. I'm like, what exactly is the value in it? Well, exactly. And I guess for larger corporations, you're doing as much as you can to make sure that your talent is engaged in what you're doing. But I don't know. There seems to be a ton of it. It just seems really crowded.
Yeah, I agree.
You've got a big week next week because it's CPHR Atlantic and you're a keynote speaker. So how's the prep going for that? Do you think it's going to be a successful show overall?
I mean, I'm more prepared than I usually am because usually my preparedness is like getting my deck ready the day before. So I'm actually doing final pass on it today. It's sold out. I think from what I've been hearing from the organizers, it's the largest CPHR Atlantic conference ever. I think we got some great keynote speakers. The agenda looks fantastic. Torin Ellis is going to be like hard to beat as far as just opening the crowd, but I'm definitely have to step my game up because I'm the opening keynote first thing in the morning, the first day. I got to set the tone properly. So it does add a bit of pressure versus being somewhere in the middle. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Should be fun. I
I
won't be
saw
sick, which
Torin
would be
at
nice.
HR Tech.
With both of you guys wearing your red shoes when you met?
Actually, we were wearing our red shoes, so it was perfect. I'm pretty sure he's excited. And obviously, you're right. A lot of pressure as the opening keynote. Our next recording, I would love to get a recap. Always interesting to see what's going on in your world. In other news, Appcast, which is based in Fredericton, New Brunswick, or one of their headquarters, the CEO, Chris Foreman, formally announced his retirement, and he's being replaced by Matt Molinari, who's the COO. So big news in the world of HR tech in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, Appcast is one of those companies that I don't know how many people know because I believe they have 80 or so people working, if not more, out of Fredericton. I could be wrong on that number. It's either 80 or 180, but
They
I'm
do.
pretty sure it's 80.
You're right.
And it's a great company. And I just don't really hear much about them here locally because I don't think they have a lot of local customers to begin with. So that's probably part of it.
No.
But I only met Chris once, a very impressive individual. So I wish him well in his retirement. I don't know if he'll actually stay retired, but I'm curious to see what he may or may not end up doing next. But
We will see. Let's move on to what's trending in the news. And I wanted to start off a little bit with international student. And obviously there was some changes that have been happening in the last year. And just recently, the government dropped the intake by an additional 10% for the next 2 years. So in total, there will be 437,000 that will be permitted, which is a huge drop from what it was before. And it now includes graduate and doctoral students who were initially exempted since 2018. So in the last 5 years, especially in the last 2 years, the numbers went up pretty dramatically. And a lot of folks are saying it's one of the major things that has caused housing and other issues in the marketplace. But I don't think that's completely fair because there is so many different factors that are causing the challenges that we're having with housing, affordability. It's not fair to blame the international students. But the angle I want to take here and get your take, this is a big hit for post-secondary schools, especially the legit ones. I know there's tons of ones that propped up that weren't really schools that were scammed, to be completely frank. But we know plenty of legit post-secondary that rely on international students to really stay alive. 36% of their whole student population is international students. So they're going to see a big drop. What's your take here overall on what's going on? And do you feel for these post-secondary?
I understand the challenges. And I would say that, honestly, running a post-secondary institution these days is you add that on trying to stay on top of curriculum because curriculum is changing so fast right now for the education systems is to basically stay relevant.
Good point.
There's a lot of challenges. So I definitely sympathize with this being a curveball that's going to make things challenging. But I think there's a systemic issue happening, as you mentioned, with housing. We see it in Moncton. I think there's 3,000 families waiting for a house or like some type of living arrangements. It's one of those things you can't just have one part of this without figuring out all the other parts. At least having a bit of a plan in motion. But it's not just housing, it's jobs as well. I believe the unemployment rate for minorities in Canada right now is 18%.
Yeah.
And so that's literally almost 1 out of 5 that are not getting jobs, or at least not getting jobs that they can make a living off of. So I understand the challenges for post-secondary education. I feel like they're in the middle of this in some ways, but at the same time, I just don't know that there's a better solution out there because we can't make things magically happen overnight. And maybe this allows for a little bit more of a societal reset in some ways and getting housing where it needs to be and creating more job opportunities in some fashion. And then maybe figuring out what is the right quota or threshold afterwards. But yeah, it's going to be challenging. You can't replace the pipeline of newcomers as well because Canadians in general are just not making enough babies. So I think there's just not as much local pipelines for students as there was years ago.
Yeah, you're right. There was a recent article that came out that the fertility rate in North America was the lowest it was ever in history. And actually, it beat last year's record. So I think this is going to be a consistent trend in that way. And honestly, I feel bad for post-secondary because obviously the business model without international students almost doesn't work. If the business model needs to rely on something that they have zero control over, that's a challenge. To your point, I think schooling needs have changed dramatically. Like the type of skill sets that you need today are completely different. And I'm not sure if the models of education are really keeping up. Like you say, time will tell. You mentioned new Canadians, the unemployment rate is around 20%. That's telling us these folks are graduating and they can't find jobs. Then the flip side of it too is everyone is saying they can't find retail or anything like that. And I'm just like, who are getting hired for those roles? I don't know. Is it the temporary foreign workers program? But to your point, I think we need a reset in the marketplace itself.
Yeah, and again, it's unfortunate because it's not something that any one group did in particular. Maybe it was whoever set the original quotas, but I also don't think people knew like all of the chain effects that might have happened by opening the quotas in terms of how much the population growth we've experienced. Like, I mean, New Brunswick's getting some of the biggest surge in population it's ever had. Forget the length, but we were on a pretty consistent streak of declining population year after year. And for the last few years, the population's actually been growing here, but we just don't have infrastructure for it. So yeah, we'll see where it goes. It's a tough place to be, but like everything else, like people will adjust, companies will adjust, organizations will adjust and figure out where the common ground makes sense.
Let's move on. And I want to play a video and get your take on it.
The first video, will it work?
Let's see.
Fired at alarming rates. My dad just sent me this article which talks about how 6 in 10 employers are already talking about firing the Gen Zs they hired only a couple months ago. I'm a Gen Z myself, so I thought this was really interesting, especially because in the article, it talks about a lot of the stuff that I talk about here on this platform. According to the article, here's a reason why a lot of the Gen Zs are getting canned. They come unprepared to do the job at hand. Blame whatever you want, but as I've said many times on this platform, just having the degree isn't enough. You can cheat your way through college and come out with no skills. Then when you get on the job, you're going to have a rude awakening. Number 2, genuinely not wanting to do the work. Gen Zs want to arrive late and leave early and do the absolute bare minimum and generally are very low initiative. It is unreasonable to expect a great work-life balance, high-paying job straight out of college. Number 3, being unprofessional and generally having very poor communication skills. How you look, talk, and act matter, no matter what job you're doing. If you're going to work, dress nice. Learn how to speak up, speak confidently, give firm handshakes. By the way, I do think that Gen Z faces unique challenges that a lot of other previous generations haven't, but every generation goes through unique struggles, so it's important for us as Gen Z to recognize them and try to improve upon them. So work hard during college, have realistic expectations when you get out of college, learn how to be professional and communicate effectively, and follow me for content.
What was his name?
His TikTok tag is Basak Carter. I'm butchering that completely, but
if I was, I would definitely be following him. I'll try to see if he's on Instagram because I'm old. I don't.
So what's your take here? Good advice?
I thought it was great advice. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the handshake thing because I've noticed that myself. Every time I speak at like a school or any type of public event, even at Startup Canada, I'm not sure if they were Gen Z, but anyway, they came over and introduced themselves and the handshakes are like abysmal. And it's just like,
okay,
but it makes you wonder like how confident the person is right out of the gate. It just doesn't leave a great. Yeah, I definitely sympathize with Gen Z. I have a lot of my family that's right in that category of Gen Z, and I see the struggles they're going through. And the reality is the advice that this guy gave is pretty bang on. And it's honestly, it's fairly simple when you think about it. It's not asking anything that's out of this world.
Do you know what hit me? And it made a lot of sense. And I'm hoping that a lot of Gen Z listening were like, oh, yeah, that's maybe right. The point of you can't expect a great work-life balance.
Yes.
And a high-paying job, like that combination coming straight out of college. And I don't know where this is coming, where they do expect both, but this is just not reality of the workplace. It doesn't happen that way. And generally that work-life balance can happen. It's just you're not going to make as much money. You're not going to be in a high-pressure job that drives a ton of value. You can't have both, is basically what he's saying. And I agree with that. I definitely agree. I think that's a reality check for a lot of folks.
Yeah, the problem is there are some exceptions where there are people who actually have both of those things, but that's just also there are
Straight
people
out
who win
of
the lottery.
college, though?
Yeah, like
Like,
they've found ways to be very successful, got lucky, but you see those as the lifestyle that Gen Z want to mimic, not realizing that there might have been a ton of work that went into that. But there are people who win the lottery, right? It's like everything else. If you want to be really good at anything, if you're an athlete, you can't play a professional sport today. That's one of the only things that hasn't been really affected by all of the societal changes. You still have to like fucking work hard. Like you've got to put the hours in because you don't get to be a professional athlete or an Olympic athlete without putting the work. So to me, it goes in the same. If you're doing something that you really want to be successful at and you want it to have that impact in your life, it's the same thing. You put in the work and you get the results. And yeah, I definitely
are
feel
they
for
being
it.
sold a dream that doesn't exist? Because I disagree with you. I don't think it's possible coming straight out of college that you can have a high paying job and tremendous work life balance. I guess it depends on what you define as high paying job, but let's say, I don't know, 150K. It's not going to happen coming out of college. Like it does happen if you work at Goldman Sachs, 80 hours a week, you've got no
Yeah,
work life balance.
yeah, totally.
But I think they might be sold a dream from what they see on Instagram and TikTok of folks with the private jets, their Rolex watches. I think they've been sold a dream that is like not going to happen to most of them, right? Like you got to work to make a living, and some do really well, start their own business, or successful. But I can tell you they're grinding it.
Yeah, if I would say what I really want to say, and actually the things I want to say is not blaming Gen Z. Because
No,
like
I'm
you
not
don't
blaming Gen Z.
No, to me, it starts with parents and then it goes to education and then it goes with who you surround yourself with. Essentially, the trajectory that you've had from being born all the way to actually entering the workforce. And those trajectories today, many schools don't even have career counselors anymore. So you've just got a lack of support. But I do think it starts with parents. And I know you're a parent, but I know how I was raised. My parents were very supportive, but I started working when I was 15. My parents didn't pay for my education. I had to work through all of those things. And I'd see where parents are like, oh, I'm going to pay for my kids' education. And I'm like, no. Part of understanding what real life is that they have to work to be able to pay for part of the education that they want to have. But anyway, I'm just renting. It's really easy for me to say these things because I don't have kids of my own. But I definitely see it to the second degree connection sometimes.
Well, you mentioned as far as professional athletes, I have an unconscious bias when it comes to folks coming into the workplace. And I feel the ones that played in team sports growing up have a definite advantage over those that didn't. Like learning how to play as a team, work together, but also that if you're good, you're going to play. If not, you're not going to play, but it doesn't mean you don't have a role. You still have a role within the team. And that's what life is. That's what business is, right? Not everyone's a star, but everyone should have a role in their place. All right, Yves, I want to jump into our big topic of the week. And this week, I want to talk about my friend Hung Lee, who everyone in the talent acquisition recruitment space would know. He's got a very popular newsletter and podcast and all that fun stuff. So when he speaks, people listen. And he came out with his top 10 predictions for talent acquisition 2025. And I thought it'd be worth talking about it because we're in the middle of a big transformation with AI and what the labor market is looking at. I'm not going to go through all of them, but want to highlight a couple of things and get your thoughts on them. And the first one is AI-enabled application become a DDoS attack on the conventional hiring funnel. I thought it was interesting because I'm hearing that a lot, but in different marketplaces. Like I'm not hearing it everywhere, but definitely talking to practitioners and other job boards that are saying, we're getting bombarded by candidates that are just not qualified. And we've talked about it before. It's getting worse and worse. What's your perspective? Are you seeing this firsthand of lazy applied tools or AI generated applications?
The lazy apply tool drive me crazy. And we get asked all the time to enable those types of tools by other suppliers that are trying to sell us this to add to Career Beacon. And we will never do it. Like I mentioned this before, we might suggest alternative, like here's other jobs you might be interested in, but we're not going to say, hey, click here and apply to 10 jobs at once or even 100 without, like, it almost ties into the Gen Z conversation we just had, which is put in some work. Getting a job is not meant to necessarily be easy. You have to stand out. You have to show that you can stand out from the competition. What is the things you're going to do that? If you're just using lazy apply, you're essentially just burying yourself with 1,000 other people that are doing the same thing. I do think it's an opportunity to stand out, and I'll keep saying that, but I hate them. So simple as that.
Yeah.
So
they've become a real issue, Yves, across the board. And I think they're given really crappy advice. Like, how many times do I hear that from different folks in the industry? Apply, it's a numbers game. Even if you're not qualified, apply. I will go against that every day. I think the advantage that a lot of folks have now that we didn't when we're that age, you can build a personal brand in the sense that people will know who you are and potentially reach out to you. But relationships are more critical now than they've ever been, because with the advent of these tools, what's happening is hurting everyone, because employers are getting deluged by applications, are not getting to all the applications. So really good candidates are being left out. I think in 2025, solving this is actually going to become a massive priority.
Yeah, I agree with that. What's next?
The next thing, the marginal automation becomes mainstream. So what I mean by that, little things like AI interview scheduling, AI note taking, AI CV screening, AI message composition, they all become default ATS features. I think we're already seeing that. You can't launch an ATS in the marketplace without those basic fundamentals now.
Yeah, I'm seeing it right now in a lot of CRM tools. I haven't seen as much yet on the ATS, HRS side of it, but I'm sure there is a lot of it happening. My experience with using the CRM ones, they're good if you don't know how to write a proper message to someone. If you have some literacy challenge, maybe. They're great as a starting point, but overall, if you've been a professional in this space for a while, they're not really. But yeah, I agree with that.
All right. I want to jump into fraud detection becomes a top 3 recruiter responsibility. This one is a tough one because background checking has actually become less and less, I would say, in the last 5 years. And it's kind of like, okay, we need to get back to it. Candidate verification to know that they're real is going to become massive, which I think it should. I think that's one of the things when it comes to the funnel of candidates coming in. Are they real or are they not real? And if you can verify that from the start, it automatically cleans up your whole feed, right?
Is that
I might be a little biased on that, but
are you a little bit of bias here?
A little bit of bias because that's actually what I do, but I see a huge issue with it.
Yeah, I agree with that one too. That's a must-have. Given that AI tools are going to make it harder and harder to decipher what's real and what's not. Yeah. Any other kind of data point that you can have that helps validate, where I'm not 100% sure if this is going to make sense to put in the responsibility of recruiters or HR managers, because it is asking a lot. But I don't know. We'll see.
I want to talk about the 2 last one because these are the most interesting to me and I agree with them. The collapse of engagement. So AI powered personalization loses its luster as we all began to doubt the personalization we've come across recently. He sees it that we're going to revoke attention from our public inboxes and we're going to treat all the messages like unknown callers. We're seeing that.
Yeah, we're already seeing it.
I have become desensitized to sales messages. Like, how many do you get? Are they real? Are they personalized? I think the person that picks up the phone and is a real person is going to have a major advantage when it comes to selling in this space or any space. In recruitment, personalization is going to become cool again. I think we're going to see the really successful salespeople really focus on that personalization and reaching out, not leveraging AI tools. And maybe AI will help them in the background, but it's become an issue.
It's all going to be holograms in the future. You're going to just have a hologram of a salesperson show up at your office to try to sell you something. And then you're going to send your hologram over to say, no, I'm not interested. I honestly don't know. That's a big question mark for me because sales email outreach is, in my opinion, It's not dead, but the lazy spam version of it is definitely dead. No one picks up the phone anymore. Text messages are even worse, I think. If you get someone trying to sell you something or trying to send an offer through text, I feel ones are getting the worst FUs. I mean, I don't even know it's a prediction. I think that's already here. So if that's a prediction, then yeah, it's not a big one.
No, none of this is a big leap because it's all things we're seeing. I think it's just going to be a bigger part of discussion because like the next one is almost exactly the same thing. It's the rehab of personal branding. It's going to become way more important that people know that you're real, especially for a recruiter, because similar to the sales function, recruiters have been trying to automate reach outs. If we're talking about staffing recruiters, they're doing BD by spreading, right? By sending a lot of messages. The same for candidates. I think the ones that are actually going one by one and leveraging their personal relationships is going to be in way better shape. And it's not a hard prediction. Like people like dealing with people. Generally, maybe I'm wrong on that. There's some things I'd rather not deal with a person. But when it comes to a job, like I don't want to talk to a robot.
I think it depends. If you're like a high turnover, high volume situation, then you're probably not trying to create relationships with everyone that you're trying to hire. You're literally trying to put bodies in place. It's not a great thing to say, but that's how some of these organizations work. If you're hiring intentionally as a smaller team or even for key roles, then taking AI out of that whole process on both sides, I think is the way to go.
Can you add a prediction to this?
Ooh, that's a really good one. Really
put you on
good.
the spot.
You didn't tell me you were gonna ask me a question on the spot that I wasn't prepared for.
I'm always testing how sharp you are, Yves.
Prediction for me is it's going to be harder to like finding the talent or even the individuals that you're trying to get in front of is just going to be harder than ever. And you're going to have to go places that you've never been before. So you're going to have to look for them on places like Reddit, WhatsApp, Facebook groups, attend networking events. It's literally that level of effort, I think, because I don't believe that people are proactively searching for employment as much as we would assume they are. Maybe that will change, but right now it definitely feels like even though it's leveled off over the last little while, I do feel that you're going to have to change your approach to get in front of the people. So you're going to have to go where they live essentially or where they hang out.
Yeah, where the right people that you need.
You're going to have to go and show up at a dirty biker bar one night and then the next night show up at some award gala or...
It seems that would be your day-to-day, your life, right?
Yeah, that's for everything in life, not just for talent attraction. But just doing one thing is not going to be...
Can I give you my...
Do you have predictions? Really?
Yeah, a quick one on that end.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a huge emphasis on skill training, which is not a massive prediction. But I think we're going back to the days of we're going to look internal, how we can upskill and promote our people before going external. New graduates are going to have to accept that they're going to start at a lower level, no matter what the degree is, and work their way through. We're going back to the 70s and the 80s because organizations are getting frustrated that they just can't find the right people. And as the video showed, Gen Z has some challenges as far as adapting to the workforce. So starting at a high position is not going to happen. You're going to have to make your way through and build those skills as you go.
I completely agree with your prediction because that's actually the basis for my presentation next week. I didn't want to spoil it. For other reasons, you have education, like the gentleman, I forget his name, that was on that TikTok video said they're not ready to do the work because they're coming out of school and they're getting some training, but not nearly enough for where they need to be. And then secondly, I know this last time I'll say AI today, but AI is transforming the roles of everyone. So 80% of all jobs are getting impacted. You can't replace every job with someone who knows AI. So it makes total sense. And hopefully it unlocks those professional development budgets that we talked about. But I love that predictions, and that's even a better predictions than mine. It's a few times that I'll tell you make better predictions than me, Serge.
Well, I'm actually a little bit smarter, but on
you're
that
older,
note,
you're wiser.
No, I don't think we've talked to you're older. Shut up. Anyways, on that note, another fun podcast. I think this is episode 11. So we're way past episode 10. starting to see some consistency, a little bit better. It depends on the week, but we'll keep improving is what I'll say to the audience. So Yves, always a pleasure to see you. Always a pleasure to talk about the world of work on Beacon Bits.
Au revoir.